Hello, sixth graders, and welcome back. We just have 1 week and a half left before our Unit 4 test, and only 2.5 weeks left before we take our semester exam and get to show everything we've learned in the first semester. Today, we're going to continue our work with percents, and we're going to talk about converting between percents and fractions. I know that you're going to do a great job on this video, and so does Mr. Smiles. Let's dive right in. Let's start with our do now. First, we're going to write fractions as decimals. Remember, to write fractions as decimals, we can divide the numerator divided by the denominator. So to write 7/25 as a decimal, I need to divide 7 by 25. When I divide with a decimal, the first thing I need to do is bring my decimal point straight up to keep my place values the same. Then I need to list my multiples of the divisor. So on the space to the right, go ahead. Remember, we're no longer going to list multiples up and down. And write 25 times 1, 25 times 2, all the way to 25 times 9. Go ahead and list the multiples of 25 on your paper. Then enter them into the computer. Check to see if your multiples are the same as mine. Now that we have our multiples written down, we can start with our division. Can we start at 7 ones, 70 tenths, or 700 hundredths? We can start at 70 tenths, so let's put a 0 in the ones place, and a line over the 0 in the tenths place. How many times does 25 go into 70? 25 goes into 70 2 times. What's 2 times 25? 2 times 25 is 50. Then I can subtract. What's 70 minus 50? 70 minus 50 is 20. I can bring down my 0. How many times does 25 go into 200? 25 goes into 200 8 times. What's 8 times 25? It's 200. When I subtract, there's 0 left over. So the answer is 28 hundredths. 7 over 25 is equal to 28 hundredths. Now you try one. Write 13 twentieths as a decimal. Remember to divide 13 divided by 20. Before you do it, let's list our multiples of 20. Go ahead and list your multiples of 20 now on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Now that your multiples of 20 are listed, convert 13 twentieths into a decimal. The correct answer is 65 hundredths. Now let's write a couple decimals as fractions. To write a decimal as a fraction, we can simply say the numerator, say the place value, and use that to write it as a fraction. How do I say 0.52 in words? It's 52 hundredths. Now I can write that as a fraction as 52 over 100, or 52 hundredths. But that's not my final answer. I still need to simplify. What's the largest number that goes into both 52 and 100? It's 4. When I divide 52 by 4 and 100 by 4, what's the simplified fraction? Well, 52 divided by 4 is 13, and 100 divided by 4 is 25. The simplified fraction is 13/25. When I write 52 hundredths as a fraction, I get 13/25. Now you try one. Write 35 hundredths as a fraction. Make sure you simplify. The correct answer is 7/20. Now let's put some numbers in order from least to greatest. -3, 0, 5, -4, and 3. If I were to put these on a number line with 0 in the middle, which number would be worth the least? Which one is farthest from 0 on the negative side? It's -4. Which number would come next? -3, then 0. Which number would come next? 3. And which number would come next? 5. So if I put these numbers in order, -4 is the smallest, then -3, then 0, then 3, then 5. Now, you try one. Put these numbers in order from least to greatest. Which answer choice shows these numbers in order from least to greatest? The correct answer is that -8 is least, followed by -4, -2, 2, and then 7. Put these numbers in order from least to greatest: 3/10, 1/4, and 2/5. The easiest way to do this is to turn each number into a decimal. 3/10 is already a decimal. To turn 1/4 into a decimal, I can divide. 1 divided by 4. What is 1 divided by 4? What's 1/4 written as a decimal? Go ahead and solve that division problem now. 1/4 written as a decimal is 25 hundredths. Now let's try another. 2/5, we need to write that as a decimal. What is 2/5 written as a decimal? Go ahead and solve that problem now. 2/5 written as a decimal is 4/10 or 40 hundredths. I know that 3/10 is the same as 30 hundredths. So now let's put these numbers in order from least to greatest. Which one is worth the least? 1/4 is worth the least. Which one would come next? 3/10 would come next. Which one is the greatest? 2/5 is the greatest. When I convert them all to decimals, it's easy to compare. Now you try one. Put in order from least to greatest: 74 hundredths, 4/5, and 3/4. Make sure that you convert 4/5 and 3/4 into decimals first. 4/5 is equal to 80 hundredths or 8/10. 3/4 is equal to 75 hundredths. So to put these numbers in order, 74 hundredths is the smallest, followed by 3/4, and then 4/5. Now let's make sure we've got our multiplication facts down. The faster you can recall your multiplication facts, the easier everything in math will be for you. Go ahead and list the multiples of 2 on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure you had all of your multiples correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 3 on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 3 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 4 on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 4 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 5 on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 5 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 6 on your paper, and then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 6 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 7 on your paper, then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 7 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 8 on your paper, then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure your multiples of 8 are correct. Go ahead and list the multiples of 9 on your paper, then enter them on the computer. Check to make sure the multiples of 9 are correct. This baby sloth is impressed with how well you did on your do now. Let's get into our new material for today. Baby sloth knows you've got this. Thanks, baby sloth. Remember, right before break, we talked about percents for the first time. Percent means out of 100. When we say that you got a 90% on an assignment, that means that if it were out of 100, you would have gotten 90 points. To write a decimal as a percent, multiply by 100. Move the decimal 2 places to the right. To write a percent as a decimal, divide by 100, or move the decimal 2 places to the left. Let's write these decimals as percents. 17 hundredths. I need to move the decimal twice to the right to write my percent. 1, 2. 1700ths is the same as 17%. 482 thousandths, that's the same as 48 and 2/10%. Now you try one. 4/10, how would I write that as a percent? Well, that's 40%. 400ths, how would I write that as a percent? Well, that's 4%. I move the decimal twice to the right. 1 and 2400ths, how would I write that as a percent? Well, that's 124%. 5800ths, how would I write that as a percent? Well, that's 58%. To convert a percent back to a decimal, I divide by 100 or move the decimal 2 times back the other way. So 23% would be 2300ths. That makes sense because percent means out of 100. So 23% means 23 out of 100 or 2300ths. 51 and 2/10% would be 0 and 512 thousandths. 60%. Write that as a decimal. It would be 6/10 or 60 hundredths. 6%. Write that as a decimal. That would be 6 hundredths. 176%. Write that as a decimal. That would be 1 and 76 hundredths. 35%. Write that as a decimal. That would be 0 and 35 hundredths. I can also write percents as fractions and write fractions as percent. To write a percent as a fraction, write the percent as the numerator and the denominator as 100. Then simplify. So 25%. I can write that as a fraction out of 100. 25% means 25 out of 100, or 25 hundredths. I can simplify by dividing both by 25. What fraction does that give me? That gives me 1/4. 25% is the same as 1/4. 10%. How would I write that as a fraction? Well, I would have 10 over 100. What's the largest number that I can divide both by? I can divide by 10 and by 10. So what's the new fraction? It's 1/10. Let's do 35%. How would I write that as a fraction? Well, I would write 35 over 100. What's the largest number I can divide both the numerator and denominator by? It's 5. So what's my new fraction? It's 7 over 20. 44%. How would I write that as a fraction? It's 44 over 100. What's the largest number that goes into the numerator and denominator? It's 4. When I divide both, what's my new fraction? It's 11 over 25. Now you try one. Write 56% as a fraction in simplest form. Let's see how you did. 56% means 56 out of 100. When I divide both by 4, I get 14 out of 25. To write a fraction as a percent, I can convert it to a decimal through division and then multiply by 100. Let's try one. Write each as a percent. 3/10. First, I need to convert that to a decimal. So I would do 3 divided by 10. When I divide 3 divided by 10, what's my decimal result? Well, I get 0 and 30 hundredths, or 0 and 3/10. Now I can convert that into a percent by moving the decimal twice. 1, 2. The answer is 30%. Let's convert 1/5 into a percent. First, I need to convert it into a decimal through division. How do I write 1/5 as a decimal? Well, 5 goes into 10 twice, so the answer is 2/10, or 20 hundredths. Now how do I write 20 hundredths as a percent? Well, I move the decimal once twice. The answer is 20%. Now you try one. Write 1/4 as a percent. 1/4 is equal to 25%. Write 5/8 as a percent. The correct answer is 62 5/10%. Write 17/20 as a percent. The correct answer is 85%. Baby Sloth knows you've done a great job on this video. Now it's time to complete the 2 practice pages. Complete the practice pages. Raise your hand when you're done so Ms. Traumatosi or Mr. Gibson can check them. You can do it.